Hey there, viewers. The trial was already intense, but what a jury member just revealed changes everything. According to new claims, Diddy tried to buy the verdict before the trial even started, and now the entire case is spiraling. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Substitution. I didn't expect to get called in. I was sitting at home with a mug of peppermint tea and one of those dollar store crossword books half filled in when the number came through. No name, no contact saved. Just a short ring and then a woman's voice, polite, rehearsed, a little too formal, telling me I'd been selected as a substitute juror in a federal case. They needed me there by 8 o'clock IEM sharp. Bring ID, wear modest clothes, expect to be there all day. I asked what happened to the other person, the original juror I was replacing. The voice didn't answer at first. Then, carefully, she said, "It was a personal safety matter, nothing to be concerned about." Which is exactly what people say when there's something to be concerned about. Still, I showed up. I always do. I was a school counselor for 11 years before everything fell apart. And, even now, I try to stick to routines. Get up, get dressed, show up, do the thing. I don't always know why I say yes to things like this. Jury duty, community volunteering, taking care of my neighbor's cat when I'm allergic. But there's something about being asked that makes me feel like I matter. They checked me in at the security gate. Metal detector, bag inspection. A sleepy man with too much cologne asked if I had a laptop, then waved me through without waiting for the answer. I took the elevator up with a handful of others, people with books, headphones, nervous expressions, and ended up in a carpeted waiting room with beige walls and a flickering TV screen playing something muted and forgettable. The woman at the reception desk handed me a clipboard and didn't smile. "Welcome to the pool," she said, like it was a funeral. "You're filling in for 18C. I sat in the far corner. I always do that too. Not because I'm antisocial, but because I like seeing everything. There's a kind of safety in watching the whole room. I took note of the two exits, the vending machines, the old man snoring against the window, and the couple whispering behind a copy of the Daily Journal. They looked like strangers pretending to be casual. About an hour in, a man in a dark blazer walked through the hallway. He wasn't with the courthouse staff. Too polished, too rehearsed in the way he glanced around. He paused by the reception desk, muttered something, and the woman handed him a sealed envelope without making eye contact. He left without a word. I stared at the envelope for a while in my head, imagined what was in it. Documents? A photo? Instructions? No one else seemed to notice. Later, a bailiff came in and called out a few names. People got up, moved out in small clusters, disappeared down the hall. I noticed he avoided looking at me, even though I wasn't on the list. I tried to catch his eye, just to nod, just to be a human in the room, but he stared past me like I was part of the wallpaper. It was subtle, but it added up. The woman next to me leaned over and whispered, "You hear what happened to the original juror? The one you're replacing?" I shook my head. She looked around before saying it, like it was a secret. They said she was followed home. Twice. Someone parked outside her apartment 2 nights in a row and left a note on her windshield. No fingerprints, nothing traceable. Just a message. "What did it say?" I asked, too quickly. She looked at me. It said, "Not this time." Then she leaned back in her chair like she hadn't said anything at all. I tried to focus on the paperwork in my lap, the instructions about conduct and silence and impartiality, but the words blurred together. "You must not discuss the case. You must report any attempts to influence your opinion. You are the wall between justice and chaos." I folded the paper neatly and put it in my bag. By mid-afternoon, most of the other substitutes had been sent home. They called us out one by one. I kept waiting to hear my name. When they finally said it, my first and last name, no title, no nickname, I stood up and walked to the front desk. "You're staying," the woman said, stamping a sheet. "You'll be seated tomorrow." "No interview?" I asked. "No voir dire?" She looked at me like I'd asked if clouds were edible. "It's already been handled." That night, I walked out to my car in the parking structure behind the courthouse. I keep my keys in my front pocket, always ready. When I got to the car, I noticed the driver's side window was cracked open. Not broken, just cracked. Like someone had opened it to see if I'd notice. I know I didn't leave it like that. I never do. I looked inside. Nothing missing. Glove compartment closed, seat the same, but there was a single breath mark on the inside of the window, like someone had leaned in and exhaled slowly. I drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of my tires on the road and my heart reminding me I was very much alive. The next day, a man met me at the courthouse entrance. Not security, not a lawyer. He wore a gray suit and sunglasses even though it was overcast. "Juror number?" he asked politely. I told him. "Excellent. We were hoping to speak with you," he said. "There's been a minor mix-up with transportation. We can offer a secured ride home after today's session. No pressure." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just nodded like I understood something I didn't. He smiled. "We take care of our civic servants." And then he handed me a card with no name, just a number, and the words for coordination. I put the card in my coat pocket and didn't look at it again that day. Inside the jury box, we weren't allowed to speak, but I could feel the tension humming through the room. Diddy sat stone-faced at the defense table, dressed in black, his eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. His lawyers whispered back and forth like priests at a dying man's bedside. I looked at the other jurors. Some were calm, some were jittery. One man kept glancing toward the hallway like he was waiting for something. We hadn't even started, and already I felt like we were in the middle of something that had no clean edges, no straight lines. Only circles, spirals, corners with shadows. In the waiting room the next day, I overheard the woman from the envelope incident on a call. She wasn't whispering this time. Her voice was sharp. "Yes, sir," she said. "No, sir." The message was delivered. "Yes, she's seated. Yes, the others are holding." Then she hung up and smiled at someone across the room like it was just another Tuesday. That night, I found the same card from the suited man tucked under my front door. I hadn't given anyone my address. It had a different number this time. Still no name, still the same printed font. Just below the number, someone had written by hand, "We're here if it gets too hard." I put it in the drawer next to my kitchen sink, the one I never use. Somewhere between the courthouse and my apartment, I stopped, feeling like a juror. I started feeling like a pawn in a game where I didn't know the rules. And the worst part? A small, shameful part of me felt chosen. Chapter 2. What the chef saw. They told me I could stay anonymous, that my name wouldn't appear in the transcripts, that my face wouldn't be in any photographs, that what I said would be for internal preparation only. I didn't believe them. I don't think anyone who's worked in that house would. The room they put me in was cold, sterile, like a hospital without the smell. No windows, no clocks, just a steel table, a pitcher of water I didn't touch, and a microphone blinking red. I kept my hands folded. One of them wouldn't stop shaking, so I pressed it down with the other. That didn't help much. The federal guy sitting across from me had a voice like an auto mechanic. Low, slow, tired, not unkind, but too practiced to be real. He opened a notebook and didn't say hello, just, "You worked as Mr. Combs's personal chef from late 2012 to mid-2021, correct?" I nodded, then realized I needed to say it. "Yes. And during that time you were based out of multiple properties?" New York, LA, Atlanta for a while, and the Island House. I regretted saying that last one the second it left my mouth. He underlined something. The Island House. We'll come back to that. I closed my eyes for a second, long enough to remember what it felt like. The red tile floors, the smell of lime leaves, the way the staff weren't allowed to look anyone in the eyes after 7 p.m. unless spoken to. "I need you to walk me through the standard protocol," the investigator said. "From a typical day." "There wasn't a typical day," I said. "Only the rules." "List them." I started counting with my fingers. No phones in the kitchen. Ever. No talking between staff unless it was about the food. Do not speak unless addressed. Never enter a room unannounced. If you're called to serve a plate, you knock, wait for the buzzer, and leave the tray on the first table. Never the second table. That one was for show. He raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean, for show?" I stared at the blinking red light on the recorder. It was like a stage. I saw things in there I still don't have words for. He waited, pen hovering. There were nights I served food to rooms where no one said a word. Sometimes the guests would be conscious, but they wouldn't move, just sitting there, eyes open, like they were waiting for something. Other times I walked in and there'd be music playing, slow, eerie stuff like it was from a dream, and the people were arranged like dolls. Staged. That's the best word. One time, there was a man in the corner, slumped over with his shirt open. A woman sitting upright in the middle, dressed in silver. I thought it was some kind of performance art. But no one moved for the full 2 minutes I was in there. No one blinked. "Did you report it?" I looked at him. "To who?" He didn't answer that. It went on. I tried asking once. There was this porter, Julio. He was new. Asked me one night, "Do they always act like that?" I told him to drop it. Next morning, he didn't show up for prep. Never came back. HR said he was transferred. But his knife kit was still in his locker. He had a cousin who came around asking questions a few days later. He stopped too. "What about the food?" the agent asked. "Anything stand out?" I nodded. It was always specific. He liked veal, especially shanks, bone-in, braised for 6 hours. He called it the memory dish, said it reminded him who he used to be. One time, he told me to cook it like it was the last thing she'd ever taste. I asked who she was. He smiled and said, "Someone who got too brave." "Did you see her?" No. That night, the second table had a glass of red wine and nothing else. In the morning, it was clean, except the fork. Still had a shred of meat on it. Looked like someone took one bite and left. He scribbled notes. "You said something about cold storage?" I felt my breath catch. That wasn't what I expected next. "There was a unit," I said slowly. "Main walk-in left side. Had 3 drawers. Top one for dry-aged meats. Middle one for prep overflow. Bottom one was locked. Padlocked. Always. Did you ever see it open?" I paused. Well, he leaned in. It was during a birthday party. One of the big ones. Everyone was there. Models, producers, old executives trying to feel young. Staff were told not to speak. No exceptions. Even if there was an emergency. Halfway through the night, there was a blackout. Just for a minute. When the lights came back, I went to check on the freezer, make sure nothing was failing, and the padlock was off. Inside, I swallowed. There was a drawer. Inside the drawer, I saw small vacuum-sealed packages. Some had food labels, others had, I don't know what they were. One had a child's sticker on it, one of those foil stars teachers give out. Blue, sparkly. "Did you take anything?" I closed it. I locked it again. I pretended I never saw it. The investigator said nothing. He just looked at me like he was trying to picture it all. I hoped he couldn't. "Well, come forward now," he asked. "You've been out of his employment for almost 4 years." I looked at my hands. "I didn't plan to. I moved, changed my number, started working in a retirement community kitchen. I cook meatloaf now, for 80-year-olds who think raisins are spicy." "Then what happened?" "Last week, I came home from work and found my front door unlocked. No signs of damage. I went inside. Everything looked normal, except the kitchen counter." "What was on the counter?" I closed my eyes. "A vacuum-sealed bag of veal shanks, with my spice rub, my recipe, my handwriting, the same way I used to label it in his house. No note, no fingerprints, just the meat, still frozen. Any idea who left it?" I opened my eyes and looked him dead in the face. "You think I'd be here if I did?" He sat back in his chair. "Wrote something longer this time." They added, "They don't send warnings like normal people. They send reminders that you were once in the room, that you can be brought back." He nodded once. "You'll be given protection, temporarily." "I don't want protection," I said. "I want this to mean something. I want someone to open that drawer." For the first time, the man across from me didn't look like he had all the answers. "Do you believe me?" I asked. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just turned off the recorder and said, "We're done for today." But I knew we weren't. Not by a long shot. Chapter 3, Hotel Transfer Protocol. It started with a phone call just after 11:40 p.m. 2 years ago. I remember the exact time because I had just made myself a weak cup of decaf from the lobby pantry and was logging shift notes into the system. Quiet night, only 3 VVIP rooms booked, 1 scheduled arrival after midnight. Then my extension lit up. Not a hotel number, not a room number, just a private line flashing blue, the kind only internal execs or outside agencies ever used. It answered with my usual night supervisor speaking. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional but pressing. "We need to initiate a full blackout suite protocol for the 6th floor, now." My fingers paused over the keyboard. "That suite's occupied," I said, confused. "Room 614, it's got a hold under." "I know who it's under," he interrupted. "He's requesting a full suite wipe. New bedding, replace all drapes with blackout grade, secure the private hallway entrance. No floor traffic until morning. Use the B team, no senior staff." Blinked at the screen. The name on the room held weight. One of those people you're trained not to name aloud. A VIP who travels with a different assistant every month, books last minute, and signs NDAs for the hotel instead of the other way around. "I'll have to call the manager," I said, already knowing I wouldn't. "No," he said, calm now. "Just log it as a maintenance audit. We've cleared it with the tower. You'll get confirmation within 10 minutes. The line went dead. 10 minutes later, I got an automated internal alert from the operations system. Maintenance override approved 614. The usual override code was replaced by a blacked-out timestamp. I still had a choice. I could have asked questions, could have walked out. But I'd been doing this job long enough to know that certain guests come with rules outside your pay grade, and when they say jump, you don't even ask how high, you just start falling. So I followed the protocol. I called up 2 housemen, both on probation and desperate to impress. I gave them the instructions: new drapes, reinforced lining, swap out the entire bedding set, pillows too, and reseal the mattress tag once replaced. I told them to tape a do not disturb strip across the suite door and to ignore anyone asking questions. I gave them a passkey that logged no timestamps. By 12:20 IEM, the 6th floor was cleared. Hallway lights dimmed to privacy mode. Elevator flagged for override. and room 614's secondary hallway entrance, one that doesn't appear on public maps, was quietly unlocked. You'd only know about that back door if you worked there long enough, or if you'd asked someone who had. Around 12:45, I saw them. Two men came down through the back elevator. One had a shaved head and wore hotel staff clothing, but I didn't recognize him. The other wore sunglasses and gloves. At night, inside, he pushed a laundry cart, one of the heavy-duty ones we use after weekend weddings, tightly packed with blankets over something shaped. They didn't speak. I stood near the security desk, pretending to fix a paper jam in the printer as they rolled past. The man in sunglasses gave me a nod, not a friendly one, just a signal acknowledging I'd seen what I wasn't supposed to. When I looked again, they were gone. I reviewed the hallway cameras 30 minutes later, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. The feed was there, time-tamped, clear. Two figures, just like I'd seen. The cart moving slowly, the wheels turning with that soft, uneven creak they always make when loaded too heavily. The woman's hand slipped out from beneath the blanket for a split second as the cart turned the corner. He saw it, then I blinked and it was gone. That's the part that kept me up afterward. The hand. Small, pale, limp. That's when the guilt started. The next morning, I was called into the back office, not by my manager. By someone who'd never been introduced, someone who already knew my full name and employee number. He didn't sit, he just stood by the mini fridge, peeled the label off a water bottle, and asked if I liked working there. "I've been here 9 years, I told him. "And you like it?" "Yes." "Good." He reached into a plain leather briefcase and pulled out a white envelope. Thick. He slid it across the table without opening it. "I need to ask for a favor. The camera footage from last night, room 6014 hallway, is being scrubbed. Routine. Internal request. You don't need to log anything." I didn't touch the envelope. "Why tell me?" "Because we value transparency," he said, deadpanned. "And loyalty." He waited. I didn't move. "It's just a gesture," he said. "Take it or don't. Either way, we'll handle the cleanup." He left me alone in the room. I opened the envelope. Cash. All 20s. At least $3,000, maybe more. Clean bills. No note. I told myself I took it because I didn't want to cause problems, that if I didn't, they'd think I was a threat. But the truth is I took it because I was afraid, and because I wanted to sleep at night. But I didn't. I stopped trusting elevators. I started walking staircases. I kept checking laundry carts like some trauma response. Every time I passed one, I lifted the top flap and braced myself. That was 2 years ago. When they contacted me about testifying, I said no at first. I hung up, burned the number they gave me, but then I saw her. Not in real life, in a photo. A blurry still frame in a file someone mailed to my house with no return address. It was her, and I knew it. Same nail polish, same birthmark near the thumb. I remembered her from the check-in log. She'd arrived with a group 3 hours before the suite request. She was smiling, laughing, holding a sparkly clutch bag. I never saw her check out. That's when I knew I couldn't keep the money anymore. I built a fire pit in my backyard, burned the envelope whole, watched the edges curl and the green ash lift like ghosts. And now, sitting here under the fluorescent lights of this holding facility, telling some gray-suited federal recorder about a night I've relived 100 times. I don't even want protection. I just want someone to find out who wheeled her out that night. And why. They keep telling me I did the right thing, that testifying matters. But when I close my eyes, all I hear is the squeak of cartwheels. And all I see is that hand. Chapter 4. How the Message Got Through. I didn't know I'd be the foreperson until the judge pointed at me with a barely raised eyebrow and said, "You look like someone who can keep a secret." That's how it started. No ceremony, no handshake. Just a quiet assumption that I could be trusted to carry the weight of something that was already beginning to feel off. It was only the second day of orientation. We hadn't even heard opening statements yet. The 12 of us had barely learned each other's names, let alone how to navigate the burden of deciding the outcome of a case that felt like it had its own weather system. One that moved behind walls, above pay grades, through rooms with no windows. I kept a journal from the beginning, not because I thought anyone would read it, but because I've always believed the mind is louder when you give it no place to speak. Writing kept my thoughts small enough to contain. The first entry was plain. Day 1. Nothing strange yet. Quiet jury room. Feels too quiet. That feeling didn't last. On day 4, I found the postcard. No return address, no stamp, just a matte black card left inside the jury lounge folder where we kept our orientation materials. It was wedged between the court decorum sheet and a laminated map of the cafeteria route. White block letters across the front. Verdict is just a word. I turned it over. Blank. I didn't say anything at first. I assumed it was a mistake, or maybe someone's idea of a sick joke. A bored clerk messing with us. But then I noticed Daniel staring at the carpet like it was moving. Daniel was in his early 40s, warehouse supervisor, 2 kids. The kind of guy who could lift a full water cooler bottle without grunting. He hadn't spoken much, but that day he looked like someone had peeled off a layer of his skin. "You all right?" I asked. He didn't answer, just nodded once. Too fast. Later, in the hall, he pulled me aside. He looked around the corner before speaking. "My car got towed last night," he said. "Okay?" I parked in my own driveway. I blinked. Billy left a note on the windshield before they took it. He added. Said, "Thought this was our lane." I asked him if he told court security. He laughed, hollow and brief. "And say what, that my driveway offended someone?" That night, I wrote it down in my journal. Day 4, postcard plus Daniel's driveway story. Something's circling us. By day 6, we weren't guessing anymore. Quote, Lisa, 29, school teacher, soft-spoken. Shaking, she sat down and whispered to me. My landlord got a call from someone asking if I was safe in the neighborhood. He asked, "What does that even mean?" She shrugged. He thought it was a welfare check, until they asked about my rent amount. Then they said something like, "She deserves better than that old place. Maybe we can help her upgrade." Again, no official names, no threats, just a voice, a question, an implication. I told her to report it. She said she'd think about it. By day 8, the messages weren't just indirect. A juror named Kevin broke down in the middle of voir dire review. Big guy, late 50s, semi-retired fire inspector. He asked to be excused from the room. When the judge stepped out, he slumped against the wall and pulled something from his jacket. A burner phone, filled in its packaging. "I didn't buy it," he whispered. "It came in the mail. No note, just this, and an envelope marked 'Start here.'" I asked what was inside. He shook his head. Didn't open it. He hadn't told anyone. Not the court, not even his wife. He said he was afraid they'd think he was unstable, that he'd be dismissed. I believed him, but I also knew we had to act. That evening, I went home and tore open my closet's false panel. My building is old, a leftover from a converted hotel, and it has odd nooks. I slid the journal inside the panel, behind a beam next to a shoebox filled with old tax returns. That journal wasn't just for me anymore. It was for whoever came next, in case we didn't make it to the end. On day 9, I finally said something to court security. I waited until after hours, asked to speak to someone off record. They gave me a man named Sam. He wore plain clothes and a badge I didn't recognize. I explained the postcards, the calls, the burner phone, the hallway glances that lasted too long, the car window that Daniel said was open when he knew it had been locked, the bag of takeout delivered to Lisa's door when she hadn't ordered anything, with her favorite drink inside. Could just be coincidence, Sam said. I laughed. Is that what you're calling it? He leaned back. We take these things seriously, but unless someone directly states coercion, there's only so much we can do. It's a public trial. Public figures. People watch. People talk. That was the end of that conversation. Day 11, another postcard. This one said, "Add system evictionskin." He built empires. It was slid under the table in the jury room. Not mailed, not placed in a folder, put there while we were present. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept picturing the woman who never came back, Juror 18C, the one replaced at the last second. No one ever told us why, just personal safety concerns. What did she see? What did she say? Day 12, Kevin didn't show up. The judge told us he'd been excused for medical reasons. No other explanation. His seat stayed empty the rest of the day. That was the moment it turned. I wrote in the journal, "This is not a jury trial. This is a siege, and we're the castle." I started documenting every detail, who sat where, what we were served for lunch, which jurors kept looking at the clock, which ones looked scared, which ones looked like they were hiding something. I couldn't prove anything yet, but I felt it. Something had gotten in, and now it was just a matter of time before it made its move. Chapter 5, The Walk-In. I haven't told this story in full since the day they took my badge and walked me out the side door. Even now, years later, I'm not sure it's safe to speak it aloud, but I know someone wrote it down. A man in a gray suit with bad handwriting and a kind voice. He used a pen, not a recorder. He said some stories don't survive on tape, only on paper. If you're reading this, it means he kept his word, or that someone else finally found what he hid. I was 29 when I started working in that house, one of those grand ocean-breathing mansions up on the hill, where the wind smells like money and no one asks questions unless they already know the answers. I'd done prep work in smaller kitchens, hotels, private parties. One yacht gig that ended with a vomiting celebrity in a broken wine cooler, but this was the big leagues. The chef was already a legend, at least in our world. Quiet, sharp-eyed, hands like stone. He didn't yell like most kitchen bosses. He didn't need to. His silence was louder. If he tapped the cutting board twice, you were moving too slow. 3 times, and you didn't come back the next day. He told me the rules on my first day. Never change the playlist, never wear perfume, and never open the walk-in unless I tell you. He said it so simply, like it was just another prep list item, but the way he looked at me after, long and flat, like he was waiting to see if I'd laugh. That's what stuck. I didn't laugh. The kitchen was deep in the belly of the house. You had to take a stairwell past the wine cellar, through a narrow hallway lined with old portraits of children. Not the families, I don't think, just faces. Most had no names. A few were water damaged, warped by time. One always felt like it was watching you, the girl with the blue ribbon and eyes that never seemed to blink. The kitchen itself was pristine. Granite counters, hanging copper pans no one ever touched, double ovens that purred like cats. But the walk-in freezer sat in the far corner like a bad memory. Tall, sealed, always locked. It didn't hum like the other machines. It was too quiet. Staff whispered about it, of course, said the chef had a system. said it was for delicate imports, rare meats, expensive herbs, truffles that cost more than rent. But no one ever saw him take anything out. He'd go in alone, close the door, and come out holding a single tray or vacuum-sealed pouch, eyes unreadable. Then there was the night I broke the rule. It started with yelling upstairs. Not unusual. The boss had mood swings and parties brought out the worst. But this time was different. Louder, cracks in the voice, furniture dragged across tile. A woman shouting, "Don't touch me," followed by the unmistakable crash of glass. The chef was nowhere to be found. I was alone on dessert prep, supposed to be finishing a layered pistachio tort. But the sound I heard wasn't from upstairs anymore. It was coming from the freezer. Pride. Soft, wet, uneven. Like someone was trying not to be heard but couldn't hold it in anymore. I told myself it was the wind, or maybe a pressure change, but my feet moved before my head caught up. I walked to the freezer door. The handle was ice cold, but not locked. That was the first thing that felt wrong. It was never unlocked. I opened it. It took a second for my eyes to adjust. The air hit me like a slap, metallic cold, sharp, dead. The kind of cold that doesn't just chill you, it warns you. Inside, it wasn't what I expected. The shelves weren't lined with food. Not really. There were sealed containers, yes, jars, vacuum bags, but they weren't organized by ingredient or cuisine. They were personal. One jar had a doll's shoe inside. Another, a ribbon, blue like the portrait. Some had liquid, thick, murky, unlabeled. Others had slips of paper folded tight and taped shut. And the toys, stacked neatly along the back wall. A plastic truck, a stuffed bear with one eye, a puzzle missing its corner, arranged like an altar or a display. Then I saw the labeled ones. One said, "Serve this week." Another, "Reserved pending." And then the third, a small vacuum bag with a card inside. Handwritten initials. MR. I froze. I knew those initials. A girl who used to come to the house with her mother. She always wore mismatched socks and loved stealing candied ginger from the prep tray. One day she stopped coming. We were told her mother had moved away. But seeing those letters inside that cold bag, I felt something twist in my stomach. Not fear. Not yet. It was something colder. Something like grief. I don't know how long I stood there. The crying had stopped. I backed out, closed the door gently, and pretended I'd been fetching cream from the secondary fridge. No one asked questions. No one looked at me differently. Until the next morning. I arrived to find my ID badge disabled, my time card missing. The chef wasn't there. The assistant manager, a woman I'd never seen before, told me I'd been let go due to structural reassignment. No explanation, no reference, no final check. They walked me out the side door. No one said goodbye. Weeks passed. I tried to move on. Took a catering gig. Focused on sleep. Tried not to hear the freezer door creaking every time I closed my eyes. Then one morning I found the note. Folded beneath my windshield wiper, tucked under the rubber just enough to stay dry. No envelope, no signature. Just 7 words, written in blocky, unfamiliar handwriting. We remember those who stay silent. I looked around the parking lot. Nothing. No one. I still have the note. I keep it in a lockbox under my bed next to the pepper spray and a photo of my sister. I don't know why I've kept it. Maybe because I want to remind myself that what I saw was real. That I didn't imagine the toys. That I didn't dream the cold. I don't know where the chef went. No one does. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I imagine him standing in front of that freezer, rearranging the jars, preserving memories that should have been buried, keeping them cold enough that no one could smell the truth. And I wonder if I'm next. Chapter 6. Room 4B never got cleaned. They didn't tell me what the room was used for when I took the job. You don't really get explanations when you're a federal contractor cleaning courthouse holding cells. They hand you a badge that only opens the doors they want, give you a mop, and tell you to keep your head down. Which I did. For months. Until room 4B, it wasn't even on the original cleaning schedule. I remember checking the printed rotation list that first week and thinking it must have been a misprint. Holding cells 1A through 4A all accounted for. Then nothing. No mention of 4B. But the door was there. Metal, unmarked, isolated at the end of a narrow corridor that always felt colder than the others. You don't ask about doors like that. You just clean the floors outside them and move on. Except room 4B kept showing up in weird ways. First, it was the smell. The rest of the cells were all the same. Sweat, bleach, metal. But that hallway, some nights it smelled like burnt rubber. Other times, it was this sharp, rotting chemical scent, like meat left in a freezer that lost power. I logged it once, officially, and marked it potential vent blockage. Next day, the report disappeared from the system. No follow-up, no call from maintenance. Then came the cameras. We don't get access to footage, but we do see the indicator lights, whether the cams are recording, paused, or looping. Most cells are monitored 24/7, but 4B's camera would blink green 1 minute and go dark the next, like it was being turned off manually. Always around 2 a.m. clock a.m. Always for exactly 2 hours. That's when I started keeping a notebook, just for myself. Just little things. Smells. Unusual staff shifts. A door found unlocked one night and mysteriously relocked by morning. One evening I even saw a tray, one of ours, pushed halfway into the hallway from under the 4B door. Full meal untouched, except for one thing, a smear of something dark along the edge of the plate. I told myself it was sauce, but it looked too thick. It looked like blood. I brought it up casually to a guard who was friendly with the staff. He just gave me this look, like I'd wandered too far into a story I wasn't part of, and said, "Some rooms aren't yours to clean. Don't forget that." So I didn't. I tried not to think about it. I stuck to the mop. I changed water filters. I collected trash bags without asking why some were heavier than they should have been. And when I passed room 4B, I stopped looking at the door. But that didn't stop it from looking at me. One night, near the end of my shift, I was walking back with the supply cart when I heard something from behind the 4B door. Not a voice, just movement, pacing, soft steps circling slowly, like someone walking in tight loops. Then the pacing stopped, and there was this low laugh. Not loud, just enough to freeze your spine. Not a man's voice, not exactly. It was too smooth, too calm. After that, I started walking the long way around, even if it took an extra 10 minutes, but it didn't matter. Once you hear that kind of sound in a place like this, you can't unhear it. You carry it with you, like static in your head. A few days later, I came in for my shift and found my ID badge didn't work. My locker was open, empty. Someone had cleared it out. Uniform, notes, everything gone. A manager I'd never met told me I'd been reassigned to external custodial rotation, which is code for you're done. No warnings, no incident reports, just gone. I went home and tried to forget about it. But the next morning, I found an envelope shoved under my apartment door. No address, no markings. Inside were the shredded pieces of my courthouse ID and a single white latex glove. Nothing else. I never told anyone about that glove. I just threw it away and started looking over my shoulder more often. But it's what I didn't see that haunts me most. I never saw who was in room 4B, never heard them speak. not clearly. But I know there was someone or something inside. I know the meal trays were real, the smell, the blood, the laugh. And I know that no one in that courthouse ever walked in or out of that room with a prisoner in cuffs. Whoever was in there didn't need restraints. They were already in control. Some nights now, I dream I'm back there, walking that hallway with my mop and gloves. The lights flicker, and the door to 4B is open. Just a crack, enough for a whisper to leak out. Come clean what you missed? That's when I always wake up. And when I do, I check the door. Because if I ever see it open in real life, I won't go in. I'll run. Chapter 7. The day the verdict cracked. I remember what the air felt like in that room. Heavy, too still, like we were breathing water instead of oxygen. You could hear everything. The creak of the chairs, the clock ticking, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. But no one was speaking, not really. We were 12 people locked in a soundproof room with one job, and by then most of us knew we weren't doing it the way we were supposed to. That morning, the foreperson, the woman with the calm voice and neat handwriting, showed up late for the first time. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her eyes were red. She didn't say anything when she sat down, just pulled out a legal pad and stared at the blank page for too long, like she couldn't remember how to write. I think we all knew something had shifted. It started slow. A few of us tried to review the final testimony, reread the instructions, go through the checklist of charges like we were supposed to. But it was all surface. No one really believed we were going to make it to the end. Then Lisa stood up. She was one of the quieter jurors, early 30s. Teacher, I think. Always polite, always on time. That day, she looked like someone had ripped the bones out of her. Pale, shaking, she walked to the far corner of the room and turned around, clutching a small black object in her hand. "I can't do this," she said. We all turned. "I need to tell you something. All of you." The foreperson looked up, confused. "Lisa?" But she cut her off. 3 weeks ago, someone approached my brother. Said they could help our family. Said I was sitting on the kind of decision that makes people rich if they're smart. They gave him a number to pass along to me. I didn't call it. I swear I didn't. But 2 days later, I got a delivery at my apartment. Box of chocolates. Card inside that said, "Some decisions are sweet." And this. She held up the burner phone. Still in its packaging. Still sealed. They left a gift card too, $5,000, just enough to make it feel casual, just enough to scare me. The room went completely still. No one spoke, not even the ones who'd been skeptical until that moment, because it wasn't just about her anymore. We'd all felt it in different ways. The strange messages, the unmarked mail, the neighbor who suddenly knew your job title when you hadn't told anyone. Daniel smacked his hand on the table. "This whole thing's rotten," he said. "Every last inch of it." Someone else muttered, "How deep does it go?" And then someone, I won't say who, looked toward the hidden corner camera and whispered, "You think the judge knows?" That's when things started to fall apart. Voices raised, accusations flew. The polite veneer cracked into shouting and pacing and finger-pointing. Someone pulled out their smartwatch and tapped the record button, just in case. "I'm not getting disbarred for this," one of the younger jurors said. "I'm not going to jail because this process is a joke." "I've got kids," another woman cried. "I didn't sign up for this." The foreperson finally stood. She didn't yell. She didn't panic. She just took a deep breath, walked to the table, and opened her folder. Then she pulled out a piece of folded paper. "I wrote this last night," she said. "I wasn't sure if I was going to say anything. I kept telling myself we were just imagining things, that we could finish this quietly and move on. But we can't. She handed the note to me. Give this to the court officer, no one else, and don't stop walking. I hesitated. If you don't, she said, then we're all part of it. So I took the note, slipped it in my jacket pocket, waited for the next break. When they called for a 15-minute recess, I didn't speak to anyone. I just walked straight past the water coolers, out the side hall, and tapped the officer on the shoulder. Your message, I said. He looked at me funny, took the paper. 10 minutes later, everything stopped. Courtroom doors sealed. Judge vanished. We were ordered back into the jury room, but no one would say why. Phones were taken. We sat in silence, hearts pounding, trying not to meet each other's eyes. An hour passed, then another. We were finally dismissed for the day with no explanation, told to return the next morning. No discussion, no deliberation, just go home. But we knew something had broken. Not the verdict, not yet, but the illusion. We weren't just jurors anymore. We were witnesses. And from that point forward, nothing, not the trial, not the testimony, not the system, could be trusted the same way again. Chapter 8. The Offer That Ended Everything. I never thought I'd come back to the file room. I'm supposed to be done with all this. The long corridors, the echoing vaults, the way fluorescent lights never seemed to hum quite right in federal buildings. Retirement was supposed to mean fishing trips, weekend calls from grandchildren, a chair that didn't squeak every time I leaned back. But here I am, again in the lower levels of a secured archives center, badge long expired, escorted by a guard who didn't even ask me why I requested access. He just said, "They're waiting for you downstairs," and waved me through. The truth is, I never left this case, not really. It followed me, in headlines I wasn't supposed to read, in colleagues who spoke in half sentences and changed topics too quickly, in a silence that wrapped around this entire situation like insulation. Thick, soundproof, manufactured. The trial didn't end with a bang. It didn't end at all, really. One day we were preparing closing arguments, and the next the entire process was paused indefinitely. No public announcement, no press release, just a string of sudden scheduling delays, sealed motions, and medical consideration. Behind the curtain, everything fell apart. Diddy's legal team, once aggressive, borderline smug, fractured in under a week. 2 defense members withdrew, citing ethical incompatibility. A third simply vanished. Judges filed sealed orders. Several department heads, not just in prosecution but in infrastructure and intelligence, quietly resigned with backdated letters. They were never replaced. And then came the disappearances. The chef, the one whose voice still echoes in my memory, calm and broken all at once, stopped returning calls. He missed a scheduled deposition in a federal safe house. His apartment lease ended early. Neighbors reported a moving truck outside his building at 2 a.m., loaded and gone within 30 minutes. No forwarding address. The assistant deputy, the one who broke protocol and opened the freezer door, was harder to trace. She didn't vanish. She was scrubbed. Her employment records, social media, even traffic tickets, all gone. I still remember her voice in that deposition, the way she whispered MR, like it physically hurt her to say the initials. I hope she's somewhere safe, but I doubt it. None of them were ever officially listed as witnesses. They became what this whole case turned into. But not forgotten. That's why I'm here today. The clerk at the records desk handed me a folder with trembling hands. It's thicker than most, tied in red twine with a diagonal tag stapled across the front. Interference suppressed. Most of what's inside is the same bureaucratic camouflage I've come to expect. Redacted statements, metadata logs, chain of custody stamps, paperwork built to be unreadable. But wedged between the pages, near the back, is a single note card. No header, no date, just ink slightly smudged from what I can only hope was water. It was never about winning. It was about what we could buy along the way. I don't know who wrote it. Could have been a juror, could have been a handler, could have been him. And I don't know what disgusts me more, that they believed it or that they might have been right. Diddy didn't walk away from the trial. He didn't win, but he didn't lose either. Not in the way people wanted. There was no televised sentence, no breaking news moment where the world saw justice in a suit. What we got instead were crumbling properties, mansions abandoned mid-renovation, studios cleared out overnight, surveillance footage left running with no one to watch it, the myth of a man who built empires reduced to a whisper behind sealed doors. But I remember everything. I remember room 4B. I remember the burner phones, the postcard that read, "Verdict is just a word." And I remember the final piece of evidence that came in just before everything was frozen. It arrived from a raid in one of his lesser-known properties, a ranch supposedly empty. Amongst boxes of electronics and luxury items, agents found a shelf tucked behind a false wall in the pantry. On it, lined carefully, were 6 jars. 5 were empty. The 6th was not. Inside was a crumpled white napkin, aged with time, smeared faintly with what looked like red wine, or something darker, and then scrawled in uneven pen, "You're next." It wasn't clear who it was meant for, but I keep that image in my head, not out of fear, not anymore. I keep it because the system cracked once, and cracks can spread, and verdict never got delivered. But some truths still leak through, even from a sealed room. Industry, even from a jar.